We're here at Noah's Halfway House in Tampa, Florida, where thousands of ex-convicts come to transition from institutionalized prison life back into society after spending 30, 40, even 50 years in prison. Hi, I'm Chris Wolf. So please join us as we go inside and speak to one of the men who's been recently paroled. Taylor Wells was only 18 years old and about to graduate from Palm Bay High School in Melbourne, Florida, when he was peer pressured into driving several men he recently met to Cape Canaveral to find some marijuana. While Taylor unknowingly waited in the car for the men to buy their marijuana, the drug dealers were robbed at gunpoint, and a 19-year-old friend of the dealers was shot in the back of the head and died several days later. Because Taylor drove one of the cars, he was convicted of first-degree felony murder and armed robbery and was sentenced to life in prison. Taylor spent almost 28 years in Florida's most violent prisons, and he is here today to tell his story. Taylor, we've known each other for probably well over a year.
Yes, sir.
And, as I researched your story, I realized that you had a relatively normal childhood.
Things were going well. Great family, lived with great community.
Yeah, you were born in Pensacola until the age of 6. You moved to West Palm Beach.
Lived in Florida my entire life. We moved from West Palm Beach up to Brevard County in the Cocoa Beach, Palm Bay, Melbourne area.
Yeah, your father was an engineer, your mother was a nurse.
Correct.
You had twin brothers.
Twin brothers. Did well in school.
Speaking of which, it's interesting. You have a very high IQ. Talk about that.
When I was in the first grade, I was doing some art projects and someone detected something in my artwork and they asked me to take a Mensa test. And I did an IQ test and I qualified for Mensa at that time. And throughout my schooling, I was involved in gifted programs.
Well, it's interesting. You have an IQ somewhere between 130 and 140, and I'm guessing that could not have hurt you, probably helped you, navigating your way through almost 30 years of prison.
Yeah, yes, sir. I was fortunate to have an experience in prison that few have, where I got along with people. I didn't have the bad, worst case scenario situations happen, and something I learned in life, maybe is attributed to my IQ or other things, is just to find the good and find the positive and move in that direction.
Interesting. Your parents divorced when you were 13 or 14, and as a consequence, you became very independent.
Yeah, I think I picked up an independent streak, and there was times when I lived with my mother and her household, or I lived with my father and his household. But between doing so, I took on this notion that I was more independent for my age, and I could probably do well on my own. 1993,
you turned 18, and that was a big year for you in terms of your independence. Talk about 1993. You had a job, an apartment. Talk about that.
What happened is at the end of 92, my birthday's in December, so at the end of 92, I turned 18, and it was my senior year of high school. And I was earning all the credits I needed to graduate, considering college and different options. I was working part-time at Taco Bell, saving up my money. I just bought my first car, a pea green 1978 Malibu Classic. Mm-hmm. It was only cost me $650. Back then it was a deal. I don't think you could find something like that nowadays. But I, going to high school, senior in high school, had a job, saving money, had a car. I had an older friend who was a year before me. He graduated a year before me. And he was leaving an apartment, but he offered me an opportunity to sublet that apartment. So about March of 93, I was already 18, and I discussed it with my family, and I knew how to take care of myself, wash my clothes, prepare my meals, do my dishes, maintain my savings. So they allowed me to take that opportunity to take over the rent payments for that apartment, and that put me out of the house, away from my family for the first time in my life, and I was trying to live on my own. Being out on my own for my first time, I was able to socialize and start to mix and mingle, and there was other apartments nearby, and I met a girl, an attractive girl, and she invited me over to her house. I talked to her a few times, just getting to know her. She had an older brother, and her older brother was kind of more of a street-savvy, older kid and tougher guy, and he thought I was pretty cool. He thought it was pretty neat that I was, getting to know his sister, and he invited me to a party with some of his friends. there was other apartments where ongoing parties would be going on. It was teens and 20-somethings, so it was a mixed crowd, and there'd be people drinking alcohol and marijuana as well, yeah.
But you hadn't really
No.
smoked marijuana at that point. You had done some research.
It seemed like it was coming, it was gaining popularity in the hip culture. It was making a resurgence, perhaps you'd say. I remember the hippies used to do it, and it was a big thing back in those days, and I kept hearing about it. So I being the way I am, I went to the library and did my own research just to see what's fact and what's fiction and whether I should even try it. And being in this party atmosphere, I went to the party a few times and I saw them doing it, so I decided to give it a try. And in doing so, I kind of got to know everybody a little bit because I socialized with them. The joint was passed around and I smoked a joint and we would talk.
So was it at that party or was it several parties later when you were peer pressured to drive some guys to another location and buy pot?
Right. What I found out was when you go to places and parties and hang out with people that are smoking pot, if the pot supply runs out, they want to go get more. And being the new guy and having the car and having just indulged with them, it was my turn to give them a ride. And I was reluctant because I didn't know them that well, and it seemed like risky behavior, but it didn't seem like saying no was going to be a good option at the time because they were a little bit tougher guys, and I felt some pressure coming on me. Definitely.
But you did say no.
I said no because I tried to offer excuses.
Right.
I said, hey guys, I got to go to school in the morning, it's late, I don't have gas, and they batted those down. And then there was actually a little, well, you said the word pressure. One of the individuals did lay a little pressure on me. He was getting aggravated with my reluctance to give a ride, and I didn't want to get in a fight. I didn't want to make a big issue of this. I'm thinking, let me give these guys a ride. Hey, it'll be cool, be all right. Give them a ride, take them there, and everything will be okay.
This was April 29th of 1993.
It was.
And they told you we have to drive to Cocoa Beach.
Yeah, it was nearby, maybe a 15, 20-minute drive from where we were. And I knew the area, so I was able to give them a ride. They were meeting another person there who was going to show them the dealer and coordinate the deal or whatever they had prearranged. So I was just providing the driving for them again.
So now it was also my understanding there were two cars. You drove a car with two other people in it.
Yep.
And then there was another car with four people in it.
The person they met had a car. The person they met that showed them to the dealer, he had a car, and there was another car with two other individuals.
Six guys total, including yourself.
I was apprehensive because I didn't know what was going on, but that was just my own apprehension. Nothing was shared with me, no details. We proceed down A1A all the way to Cocoa Beach. They met the other individual, and he told them the smaller directions, where to turn, where to get off. So we turned off a long, sandy, windy road, which took us out close to the beach and right up to the dealer's house and where he was located.
They all get out of the car.
Yeah.
And you stay in the car because you're just waiting for them.
I wasn't involved in the deal. I was just giving them a ride, so I stayed in my car. They rounded the corner to the house. It was kind of out of sight. There was a little stand of trees. It was out of sight. They rounded the corner, went to the house, and that's when things went bad. I'm sitting in my car, and I was close enough to the beach where I could actually hear the waves crashing. And because I was a little nervous being on a drug deal, I was out giving a ride to a drug deal. I remember listening to the waves as they crashed on the beach, and it was a soothing sound. And I heard a pop, and it startled me because I didn't know what it was, but it came from the direction of the house. And I was apprehensive. I mean, I was nervous. I was scared. I heard a sound, but I focused back on the sound of the beach, of the waves, and I heard another pop. And just seconds after the second pop, the guys that left my car and the occupants of the vehicles came running back towards the cars, and they're yelling, "Go, get out of here, start the car." They jump in the two guys get back in my car, and in this process, I'm trying to figure out what just happened. I don't know, were those gunshots, who was shooting at who, what just happened inside the house. And the other car starts and leaves. I try to start my car, and the engine floods because I was nervous. I was shaking. I tried to turn the ignition. I pushed on the gas. The engine floods. The other car takes off, and I'm being yelled at. "Go, get out of here, start the car." I don't know what just happened. There's gunshots. I'm scared. The other car's gone, and I finally get my car to engage, and I follow behind the other car.
And where did everybody go?
We proceeded away from the house, the same direction we came, and along the way, one of the guys in my car says, "Hey, we need to stop off somewhere. I need to go to a hotel or something," because he had on him stolen money and stolen marijuana that he had taken from the the dealer's house. And so I take him to a hotel and drop him off. And the other occupants of the other car are called. He called them, and they meet him at the hotel. And I'm looking for the opportune time to leave at that point.
The guy who had the drugs and money on him, was this the brother of the girl you liked?
That's the guy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you drop him off at some hotel.
Yeah, and I'm there with him, and the other guys from the other car show up, and things are discussed. What actually happened? I'm learning the details of what actually happened. The first shot was a bullet that was fired into the ceiling of the house. The trigger was pulled for whatever reason it happened. The bullet was fired into the ceiling of the house. The second shot was when the people I brought up there were leaving the house. One fella stayed back and yelled at someone and fired a single shot into the house, and that bullet struck one of the people inside the house in the back of the head. And it wasn't even a dealer. It was a guy that was there just to visit his buddy. Just happened to be there that night. And the bullet that struck him was fatal. So his life ended that night, and my life was changed as well.
So in the morning, you wake up, what happens?
In the morning when I woke up, there's a bang on my door, and someone announces that it's the police, and they're there for me. And when I open the door, I am asked to step outside, and I'm taken to the ground, and I'm put in handcuffs. And they came to arrest me for my involvement in the crime that night, because the transportation that I provided made me an element of the crime, made me responsible for my involvement.
And this woman's brother put some bags in your apartment,
He
correct?
had been staying there after the crime. The marijuana that he had acquired from the house that was stolen, some of that was at the house, but the guns used in the crime were also at my apartment.
Right.
So that linked me to the crime. Those guns being in my apartment and me giving them a ride.
Did they arrest you at your apartment or when they took you
No,
down?
They arrested me at my apartment, took me into custody, and then took me to the sheriff's department for processing, and then to the Brevard County Jail for intake. And I was naive to the whole system, and I was told I'd be meeting with a judge in the morning. So I'd actually, back to my notion of independence, I didn't even call my family. I thought it would be resolved in the morning.
You thought you would take
I thought
care
it'd
of
be
this.
resolved and be taken care of, because I was involved in something, but I didn't rob, I didn't steal, I didn't shoot anybody. And in my naivety, I thought that made me innocent. As I understand it today, there's the concept of the felony murder rule, which people involved in something as a group all share a level of responsibility. There's the concept of felony murder, and it's vicarious guilt, meaning that if a group of adults decide to do a crime together, and during the commission of that crime, someone is injured and resulting in death, all participants in the crime are held liable for that death. And in Florida, it's considered first-degree murder. If the crime was a robbery or a burglary, such as what occurred on that night, and somebody dies, it's considered first-degree murder.
So you spent 16 months in jail awaiting a trial.
I did. For 16 months I was in jail, and I discussed plea offers, but nothing was in the terms that I could accept, so we went to trial.
You had a public defender?
I had a public defender, and we were wishing, of course I was hoping for the best, thinking that things would be resolved in the courtroom and I'd be released. Of course, that was the hope, but it didn't go that way. A lot of the facts of the crime were discussed in the courtroom. What happened, what occurred inside the house, and that the fact that I gave them a ride. Some of the things I said implicated me enough that the state attorney's office was able to use that testimony to help secure my conviction.
How long was the trial?
3 days.
3 days?
Yeah, 3 days. Trial lasted 3 days.
Quick verdict?
They came back and asked to listen to that arrest interview again, because they wanted to listen to what I said during the interview and what how that statement went. And they came back with a guilty verdict, and it's pretty much it's the way the law works. If I was involved
you
in
were
a
the
crime,
driver, even though you didn't know
Yeah.
what was happening, they still held you liable.
That's right.
Whatever happened to the brother of the woman you were in?
Yeah, he went to trial as well, separate trials. Everybody has separate trials, and in his trial, I I really don't know how it came out, but separate trials, separate verdicts. His jury decided that the crime was only second-degree murder.
Wow.
And that's allowed in Florida. It's permissible under Florida law that it's separate trials, separate juries, one crime, but it can be viewed different ways by different juries.
How about the shooter? What happened to him?
Because he was facing life in prison or possibly even death penalty under Florida law, he decided to accept guilt, and I think he was sentenced to 2 life sentences in Florida. But he had lived a life of crime and was on the run for charges in New York, and he was exported to New York to do prison time for the crimes that he had committed there. And I believe a few decades later, he was sent to Florida.
So off you go at age 18 to the Orlando Reception Center.
Orlando Reception Center had opened back then after around the time when I was convicted. I had actually turned 19 by the time I was convicted, and I went to Central Florida Reception Center, which was in Orlando, and I went through their intake system and got oriented to the new prison system. I was entering a new world that I had no idea of.
I asked you, was Sumter Correctional Institution a violent place, and were you subjected to violence? And you responded in a very interesting way. You asked me the question. You said, Chris, how many white cars did you see today?
Right. I found that what we focus on is what we focus on. If I'm always looking for the negative things, I'm always going to see the negative things. And the question, how many white cars did you see today? You might have passed hundreds of white cars, but unless you're actually focusing on them and paying attention to them, it just passes right through your mind. You don't even acknowledge it. So in the same sense, I wasn't looking for trouble, wasn't looking for mischief. I was looking for to better myself, to educate myself, and the negative experiences weren't there for me. I'm not going to get a second chance in life. You have one life to live, and if that's where I was at, I needed to make the most of it. So I had to look for opportunities that were available to me to better myself. People say they want to read books, they want to exercise more, they want to write stories, things that they want to do in life. They have desires or hopes or dreams. Well, I had an opportunity there to do those things, and I did it. When I would read books, I'd probably read a book a week, and if you say for 20 years, that's probably 1,000 books, maybe 50 a year. So I was reading as many books as I could. I was taking vocational classes. The legal, I became the certified law clerk. I got into teaching myself more about computers. I was given an opportunity to work in a prison industry, and I was able to teach myself how to use Access and Word and Excel programs from back in the 90s. So whenever an opportunity to better myself or learn something, I seized it.
What advice do you have for parents and teachers and teenagers about making choices that put them in prison?
Well, things are illegal for a reason. That's one issue. And when I started looking into marijuana, it was an illegal substance. And one concept I didn't know is the whole idea of a black market. When I started getting involved in that, and I put me in a whole different circle of people and circumstances. So because things are illegal, it's best to not do the things that are illegal. Simple, real simple. If it's wrong, don't do it. And that's probably hard to say with teenagers, because as such as myself, I wanted to look into it and I thought I could decide on my own. Choosing the proper circle of friends, not venturing into circles that are risky, dangerous, looking further down the line, what could be the consequences of these actions or these decisions or these choice of friends. I've never met a guy in prison that said once he started drinking alcohol, his life got better. He didn't say he got a better job, a better car, his family got tighter. It always seems to go south. And life is fine without that for me.
The death rate in prisons is tremendous. How did you survive 27 years in prison?
I think I just approach everybody with a positive, easygoing attitude. I'm laid back. I get along with so many people. I learned, actually, I've been, in some ways I benefited by I look for the silver linings in life. 27
years of incarceration. You're released 1 year ago yesterday.
1 year ago.
What are the biggest wows since you've been out?
So there's many wows, and there's different times in life. Like I'll be walking through a shopping center, and I'm just another guy walking through a shopping center. Nobody knows my story. I don't have a scarlet letter, and it's not written on my forehead. I'm just a a guy walking through the place. And that's a great feeling that I can. There's like at times there's different filters I see the world through. Sometimes it's the pinch me moment. I can't believe I did all those years and here I am free today. But then there's other times it's like, man, I'm just here living a normal guy, making the best of my life.
Taylor, you're a good man. You're a success story. And I thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much.
Thank you very much.
Over the years, I've met hundreds of life-sentenced men who ended up in prison because they made bad choices and bad decisions. And what I've learned is that we are all just one bad decision from incarceration.